My body is ready. I think we'll be okay.
As we hit it, welcome to the CrossFit Canada podcast, telling the stories of Canadian affiliate owners and coaches. And if anyone is wondering if our guest's body today is ready, it is. I would like to welcome one of our great seminar staff, Ben Poirier. So
Not bad. Not bad.
it was okay.
Oh,
My
yeah.
accent was a little south, but so how we get this started is just like a new person dropping into a class. You can introduce yourself, where you coach at, and our question of the day today will be favorite destination of yours. One of your favorite destinations.
Anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world. You don't even have to have been there. You could just like the idea of that place as a destination.
Okay, I have an answer to that question. Yeah.
Okay, let's start with the easy part. Your name.
My name is Ben, short for Benoit. No one calls me Benoit except for my grandmother, who's passed. And yeah, it's Coach Ben. That's what I generally go by, or Big Ben, because I just happen to be 6'1", 250 pounds at the moment. So it kind of comes with the territory.
And the affiliate you coach at?
I coach
for
at
Anglophones?
L'usine in Saint-Eustache, Quebec. I've been there for coming up close to 3 years now, almost 3 years. Yep. Before that, I was at CrossFit Laval. That's where I started in 2010. Back when CrossFit was a completely different thing. And then when that closed due to COVID, I kind of was homeless for a bit. Even though I had moved to Saint-Eustache in the beginning of 2020. After CrossFit Laval closed in 2021, I was like, oh gosh, like where am I going to end up? And then it was very fortuitous. I was at the park with my son and I saw another dad there wearing a CrossFit shirt. I was like, where do you train? He's like, oh, I was in Saskatchewan. I was like, oh, how is it? He's like, oh, it was recently bought out with new ownership and stuff like that. And it's really nice. I was like, okay. And then I checked it out and yeah, it's a well-run affiliate. I get along with the owners really nicely. And then about 3 months after I started training there, I started coaching there.
Now, before we get too far down that journey, we haven't talked about the destination. Don't forget that part. Don't forget that part.
It's Japan.
Okay.
It's Japan.
How many times have you been?
None. But
None.
None. But it's at the top of my list. It's at the top of my list of places that I would want to visit. Just like go visit the shrines in the mountains. I don't even really care too much about big cities. I'm not a big city person, but just the whole mystique and allure and the scenery and everything I've seen of that place, the culture, the history, it sounds like something that I would really enjoy. Yeah, it would definitely be Japan.
Very cool. Well, then keeping in the theme of places we would go to, if maybe I guess we'd hypothetically have this wishes, I'd love to go to London and England and kind of tour around the island and all those aspects. Something about not the center of civilization, but the history that's happened in that city over the course of years and years and years fascinates me. So
I think it's a good pick. I'm lucky enough to have been to London once. It was in high school. It's been a minute, but I wasn't there for very long. But it is definitely somewhere that I'm glad to have been at least once in my life.
Very cool.
Just like I've been to Paris a few times now, but that's another place where you have to go at least once just because it's Paris. Is it my favorite place? Not necessarily, even though there are a lot of really nice things to do. But if you have to travel someplace, you got to hit the big, like the epicenters of civilization. And Paris is one, London is one. I'm very happy to have visited those places. So I think that's a good choice, Matt.
Thank you, sir. So now you got into it. Well, you kind of you mentioned 2010, but let's start at the beginning. When did you get when and how did you get into CrossFit? I always like hearing the origin stories.
My origin story is I was 21 at the time, and I had been clinically depressed between 19 and 21, and I wasn't in very good shape at the time, neither mentally nor physically for that matter. And I had read like some random article on CrossFit in Muscle and Fitness. You mentioned Jocelyn as a guest that you've had, and she actually posted it, I think, on her Instagram, the cover of that exact magazine that I read back in probably 2009. And I was like, oh, that looks like fun. And I didn't think much of it because I didn't really identify with being an athlete at the time. But in that summer, I wanted to make a change for myself. I was about like 30 pounds overweight. I didn't like where I was. And I went to the movie theaters with my dad and my sister. And on the way home, I saw a sign for CrossFit Laval. Back when it was in the back of a yoga store right in front of where the movie theater was. And it's really just by happenstance that I saw CrossFit Laval, because if I hadn't seen that sign, I'm not sure I would have ever started. But I saw it and I was like, I read about that CrossFit thing. Like maybe I can go try it out. And I wouldn't say the rest is history, but almost. Like I visited, I think the week after. I saw the sign and I didn't dilly dally. I was like, okay, let's go. Open up walk through the yoga store. Felt like a total imposter. Opened the door to the gym, which was the size of like your average master bedroom. and there was Mads Brook, who's also on staff, and he was like 135 pounds at the time. He was still in his competitive sailing career. Greeted me with a smile and was like, when do you want to try? I was like, as soon as I can, really. And then went through the on-ramp, discovered that I had a knack for rowing and deadlifting, and had no upper body strength to speak of. Push-ups on my knees for days with poor form, and blue bands for pull-ups. And even then, like, that was rocky. So, but I was hooked. I stuck with it, going 4 times a week. In case you haven't figured it out by now, I'm one of those kinds of people where I'm a little all or nothing. It's like I'm starting for real. Like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to see it through. 4 times a week, did that for a few months. And then eventually it was 5. And then I never stopped. I just never stopped doing it. And we're 15 years in, and even though now I do a little bit more strongman stuff as like my sport, the foundation of my GPP is still CrossFit.
Very cool. And so, as we have Doobie kicked off this magical podcast journey we have started here.
Fantastic.
And he talked more about his new venture. So it'd be interesting. You got to see CrossFit Laval go through that its whole evolution.
Yep.
But that's where you got a majority of your coach development and introduction and everything too, as well, right? What was it like, I guess, from a retrospective standpoint, seeing that development of that affiliate?
It's fun. It's really fun to reflect on it sometimes, because the types of people that CrossFit attracted back in 2010 were ex-military, firefighters, police officers, MMA types, and people who were just kind of like extreme. And I don't know, I think my personality fit, but I was definitely not someone extreme. I never played sports at a high level. I was always okay at sports, and I'd always been active, quote unquote, but I wasn't like an athlete of like any significant talent or capacity. And I knew that, and I was okay with that. But I really like the pushing myself. I was at a point in my life where I wanted that. And at the time, like, scaling wasn't even really much of a thing. It was kind of like, can you do it, RX? Yeah, I think so. Okay, do it.
Suffer the whole time.
Yeah, suffer the whole time. I still have my first log. It's like this tiny little red book. I still have it. And if I flip through it, like, it blows my mind how, like, that would be unacceptable to have like a 30-minute Annie. For those who don't know, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10 double unders and sit-ups. And at the time, being very unfit and having no neurological capacity to do double unders, it was like one single, one double, one single, one double, break for 20 seconds. One single, one double. And like, that was the pace. And then like the sit-ups were kind of like a rest. And then I would slog through the double unders at like a pace that makes no sense. And that was it. It was just like you suffered through it back then. And then we moved not long after that. I started in the back of that yoga shop. Matt got kicked out and we moved locations. And I remember we moved the gym. We all pitched in. We were like, however many members at the time, probably like 40 or whatever number we were. I moved the gym to a new location that we were at for almost 10 years. And it was sometime in 2021 that the idea of coaching started to enter my mind, because Matt at the time was coaching every class. And I was, or almost, not every class, but almost every class. And I was like, that's a little crazy. Like maybe one day he'd want help. And I was going online and I was trying to find like the level 1 course. And at the time there was just very, very few courses. And there
You
had
said,
been like,
sorry, you said 2021. Did you
oh,
mean
sorry, 2011. Sorry, my
2011?
mistake.
Okay.
Yeah, 2011. So in 2011, I started considering, coaching, but there just wasn't a lot of courses. And then I remember at one point they posted one in the September of 2011, and I didn't have a lot of money at the time, and I had to pay by check. So I like saved up my pennies, went to the bank, got a check in USD, mailed it to sign up for my level 1. Did my level 1 end of 2011. Because
Cool.
I really liked the methodology and I wanted to learn more, but 2, with the idea that maybe one day I would start to coach when Matt wanted help. And that journey began beginning of 2012. So about March of 2012 is when I started to coach in earnest.
Where was your, sorry to cut you off, where was your level 1, and do you remember who was on staff?
Yeah, so that's a fun story because it was in Montreal at the first usine, the original one, the one owned by Dom. And it was a small affiliate. There was Nadia Shatila, Pat Sherwood, Russell Berger, Dave Lipson, and Matt DeBrook was an intern. He was interning that seminar. And I remember like doing the snatch group in the parking lot in front, because the gym was tiny. It was super, super small gym. And so we were like bouncing around. Like we went into an abandoned building to do like one of the breakouts, and we were in a parking lot for the snatch breakout. And but it was a really good time. And it was around that time where Matt was interning and got on staff that the coaching at the gym also started to get better. And then I got on board coaching in 2012, and I was very fortunate to have a mentor and a boss that was also pushing to be like the best coach that he could be. And so it was a great opportunity for me at the time.
I want to shift gears slightly. We'll get back onto this magical journey, but you mentioned something that I want to talk about before we forget. And it seemed like you mentioned that breakout group was full of a lot of adaptation. We were in the parking lot. We were in an abandoned building. And I mean, when we first hosted a level 1 at our place, it was middle of COVID, and they were out in our backyard and out in the parking lot. And I mean, you've come to our affiliate to do the level 2. And I guess it's worth talking about, like, being able to just adapt to not perfect conditions, but just favorable conditions enough to allow you to coach, and getting less caught up in the environment. Maybe some affiliate owners who struggle with wanting more out of their space, but are you using your space with the effective amount of coaching intensity? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I can see both sides, in the sense that, let's call CrossFit for all intents and purposes like a premium product. And so as it moved into Gen Pop, as it evolved, there are people that are coming to your gym, our gym, that have a certain standard, we'll say, in terms of what the gym should look and feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in 2010, it could be super scrappy. And you know what? Too bad. Like that was the vibe, for lack of a better term. It was like we're being scrappy. And in the case of my level 1, like we had, close to 50 participants in a gym that could host maybe a class for 8 people at a time. And it worked. Like we made it work by going outside, going to the parking lot and doing what we need to do. I think CrossFit still retains some of that because when you're running outside, you're running with what's available around the gym. And I don't think any CrossFit gym worth its salt will be like, we're not going to go running. It's not pretty enough outside. Like, you're going to go running outside. You're going to hit the pavement as long as the conditions are nice, obviously, because being in Canada, running in the wintertime is sometimes a little sketchy, especially when the freezing rain hits. But
yeah.
There's that side. And then there's the side that you brought up. Like, what is it that you have to work with and how can you maximize that? And that's the part of the scrappiness that I still love from that era, where, you know, the gym that I'm coaching at now is very different from CrossFit Laval. So I just make do with what I have. Luckily, the owners are like very involved, really care about the community. And so like they'll invest in new equipment and that stuff. And like the owner writes all the programming. So generally the programming fits what they have. But the way the gym is laid out, like that, they haven't been able to change from the previous ownership. And so sometimes like your lines of sight are a little weird. Sometimes you just got to make do and like be heard, be seen, still provide good coaching, still cue, correct, you know, the foundational stuff of what it is that we need to do for our members. And that mentality hasn't changed in the last, 13 years that I've been coaching.
Very cool. So as we get back on that journey, so you started coaching at Laval, and then, not that there aren't some great stories in between there, but let's talk about your first internship on staff and then what that getting on staff journey was like.
Yeah. So 2012 started coaching. 2014 they released the L3, and I was an early adopter. So I was still in university at the time, and it just like worked out because I ended up studying for the level 3 at the same time as I was studying for my other exams, and I was taking a bunch of electives at the time, like anatomy, and like I was trying to like help myself out. Yeah. Just, this is maybe relevant, but my undergrad was psychology, and it's one of the reasons why I fell in love with coaching is because coaching is applied psychology in a lot of ways. But I was trying to fill my elective with stuff that were like related to sports performance. I would sit in science classes and people were like, "Aren't you in psych?" I'd be like, "Yeah, but I'm here because this is what I'm interested in." So I was an early adopter of the level 3, wrote that exam in December of 2014. And then because I was one of the very few level 3s at the time, and I was bilingual, I started working as a translator for CrossFit in 2015. So in around that time, they started translating seminars in Quebec, only in Quebec, but translate seminars in Quebec from English to French to help with the Francophone population here in Quebec, which was super cool. It was fun that we were able to do that for them. And on top of that, it was a great opportunity for me because while I was around seminar staff, I was in like doing seminars and participating in that. I wasn't sure at that point if I wanted to be on staff or not, but it was definitely something that was kind of like a future goal. And so I was super on board, and translating seminars was a lot of fun. And then when I was coming up on my renewal in 2017 for my level 3, I decided to go down to Boston to redo my level 2 at the time for CEUs. And I also did the coaches development course, which I don't think exists anymore, but I got to spend like a 2-day intensive with Austin Malleolo at the time. It was super, super, super beneficial. And I have no qualms about saying that at the end of that, he asked me, he's like, "Have you ever considered being on staff?" And I was like, "Yes." But I kind of left it at that. And then decided a couple of weeks later to actually submit an application for that. So by that point, I had been translating seminars for about 2 years. I'd been working as a coach full time for about 5, and then went through the internship process to be on staff, which was a 9-month process for me.
Very cool. So coaching full time, that was all you were doing, or you were filling in some gigs here and there?
So I graduated from, before I'd even finished university, I was already coaching 20 to 25 hours a week, which,
Okay.
for being honest, is pretty much full time in CrossFit.
Yes.
So that was the only thing I was doing from 2013. From 2013, I left. I had a part-time job that I was doing while I was going through school. I ended up switching that just for coaching for a bit, and then eventually became full-time coaching. And I finished my degree doing kind of like almost like part-time schooling. It like worked out because I would put all my classes in the morning, trudge like a huge bag full of meals and school books and gym equipment, or like my shorts and stuff, my rope. I'd go to university on public transit, take public transit to the gym. I didn't have a car at the time. And that was my lifestyle. My lifestyle was completely, it was school, training, coaching. And then eventually when I finished my degree, I was able to coach like a little bit more. But by that time, I was pretty much doing the 20 to 25 hours. And that's how I was paying the bills and paying for my apartment. And yeah, it started around that time, just coaching.
It seems like there's a common thread between folks who have gotten to a certain level at CrossFit and as a coach. There's definitely probably out of the tens of people listening to this have aspirations of getting on staff or wanted to at some point, but wanting to just fully immerse yourself into the program, not necessarily for a goal of getting on staff, but just fully immersing it because it's what's in your being. And then something like getting on staff becomes a result of, not the destination.
For sure. And especially, with the internship process being what it is, and the fact that you have to have at least a level 3 to even go through the internship process, you have to be bought in, and you can't really fake it. And it definitely helped my case that I had been coaching full time for a bit, and this being on staff is like the next logical step in terms of coach's development for me. Because there's a great quote. Are you familiar with Elite FTS, the equipment company?
No.
It's an American equipment company, and the tagline for that brand is live, learn, pass on. And I lived CrossFit. I learned CrossFit. I got fully immersed. And then the next logical step after that is to pass it on. And even now, like it's been, almost 6 years now that I've been on staff. And when I go into a seminar, that is the thing that motivates me to this day, is that I have a lot of passion for something that I have used to change people's lives, and the people in front of me want to also change people's lives. How can I transmit that passion and just allow them to do what they do, but better? Especially in the case of the level 2. In the case of the level 1, then it's really just transmitting the passion about what it is that we do. And I still think to this day that Greg Glassman's definition of fitness is unparalleled. I get goosebumps when I think back to me in that chair back in 2011, just it being completely mind-blowing. It's unfortunate how easy it is to take for granted now in 2025 how revolutionary it was 15 years ago. Because now it's like, it's been around for so long, people are just like, oh yeah, whatever. But at the time, it was groundbreaking. And that's the kind of like passion and excitement that I want to try and bring to people, and let them know that, what we do is super, super cool. And it's based on something that hadn't really existed before, or at least not in a way that it was presented. I know that people like to talk about how, snatches and box jumps existed before CrossFit. And like, that's not the argument here. It's
right.
It's more, how do you give people best value for money in terms of their fitness goals without them trudging in the gym for 2 hours or doing low intensity stuff with no results or not taking care of their nutrition. And like up until I remember going to a gym as like a 19-year-old and just being bored to tears. Like, oh, this is how I'm going to get fit. It's like 4 sets of 10 and 4 sets of 10 in another movement with these rest periods. And then now it's funny because you can read like Cosmopolitan magazine and they talk about AMRAPs in like their workout section. You're like, this was not a thing 15 years ago. It really was not. And so I still get amped up about the methodology itself and what it brought to the world.
But I think, it's interesting. Exactly. Like now there's an infinitely an amount of distractions out there, and especially within the CrossFit space. And I mean, how to delicately say, there are some folks out there trying to just pull people away from the kernel of CrossFit and forgetting that like there's something profoundly elegant in the saying of just when you feel like you've mastered the basics, go back and study them with more detail. Like we just did a mock version of the what is CrossFit and what is fitness seminar for my members. And so to your point about like 4 sets of 10 as someone to improve their health, boredom can creep in. But the moment you lay out sickness, wellness, fitness onto a continuum, 10 out of 10 people will have some sort of revelation of just saying, okay, I sort of have an obligation to myself for the rest of my life to keep doing something.
Yeah.
And that's very cool.
For sure. It's, why does intensity work? It just does. And what makes functional movements, with the definition of CrossFit, what makes functional movements, constantly varied functional movements performed at high intensity so effective? It does work. And it's very, very simple. And there is a lot of distractions, but I think that's the pitfall of nearly anything over time, where something is beautiful and elegant and for all intents and purposes really functional and effective, and then people try and like put a spin on the thing and try and make it seem new again and like reinventing the wheel. It's like, well, my version of CrossFit by da 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 is superior to another version of CrossFit. I don't think so. I think you can have programming mistakes for sure. There can be programming optimizations, and I'm a bit of a programming nerd. So like, yeah, for sure. But at the end of the day, constantly varied functional movements performed at high intensity, work capacity across broad time modal domains. They're the foundations of what we do, and they work well because they're simple. They just do.
They'll always be there too. That's the beauty of the basics, is they'll always be there to fall back on when you feel lost or bored, or there's probably always something you've missed and you don't realize it until you go back and look for it.
Oh yeah. And I think it's interesting now being in Strongman and like my wife being into bodybuilding, that it's not just a CrossFit thing. Like even in other sports, like there seems to be this trend to over complexify everything. We've known since like the 50s and 60s that progressive overload works, but then people try and, for strength at least, and then people try and like reinvent the wheel and just like make it super, super complex. It does not need to be. At the end of the day, whether you're doing cube, CrossFit, whatever, like intensity matters, progressive overload matters, going to your physical and psychological tolerances. What is that? That's RPE, the whole trend about rate of perceived exhaustion that we're in right now. Well, guess what? If you're having a bad day and your physical and psychological tolerances on that day are lower, it's not something necessarily to beat yourself up about. It's just you're having a bad day. You didn't sleep as well. You skipped breakfast that morning because you were late getting your kids to school. Whatever it may be, like we like to attach like fancy terms and pretend as if it's something revolutionary, but it's not. Training principles haven't really changed much, in my opinion, at least over the last several decades. It's just a matter of committing to those basics and finding training modalities or styles that work for you. And if your goal is just to be fit, functional, stave off decrepitude, play with your kids at the park, I'd be hard pressed to give you something better than what CrossFit has to offer you.
Well, and exactly. And, you know, as many don't realize, or many who try to skip to the end of the book rather than start at the beginning, is the program was designed to be open source.
Yep. 100%.
Right. And that is the, so I think, you know, if someone tries to like prove Greg wrong in a way or find a different spin, it's like, no, he's already covered it. The guy's so smart. He's already covered the fact that, hey, I'm going to leave this open for everyone as a means to prove the efficacy of the program. And here, you know, 23 years later, it always just comes back to the beginning of constantly very functional movements at high intensity, and, you know, eat better and weigh and measure your foods.
Yep. Yeah. And like the equipment list has grown over the last 15 years. Like, you know, eco bikes didn't exist. Like, there were fan bikes back in 2010. I'm not going to say that there weren't, but they weren't as much of a key feature of the programming as rowers were. Rowers were like, you know, the staple. It was like rowers, dumbbells, skipping ropes, box jumps, barbells, pull-up bars, rings. And then like it branched out, but whether you're doing a sandbag clean or a clean, what's the goal of the clean? The goal of the clean is to elicit a high power output. And if you do it with enough intensity over a consistent period of time, and you keep pushing your physical and psychological tolerances, well, you're going to get stronger, you're going to get fitter. And then you take that to wherever you want it to go, really. Like at one point, if you find that you're fit enough and you're happy with where you're at and you can do all the things that you want to do in your life, well, great. You know, that was the whole point of the program. The theoretical hierarchy of the athlete, like sport at the top might just be life. And if you're able to do everything that you want to do in your life, and you did it with a program that you don't have to do for 2 hours a day, 4 times a week, but you could reasonably get doing one class a day, 3 times a week, that's great value. It's great value. The fitness that you're getting from something so simple.
For sure. And you said sport, and you've already touched upon it. So how long have you been participating in Strongman for now?
A whole 6 months.
A whole 6 months. Okay.
Yeah, a whole 6 months. This is just brand new for me.
And what has that been like? Are you just training the principles of it? Have you actually competed in a competition? Did they warn you on staff to say, hey, you're not doing CrossFit, give your shirt back? Or
no, not at all. No, I did. It's been something that I've been mulling for quite some time there. I've been admittedly in the contemplation stage for Strongman for probably over a year. And especially now with the emergence of weight classes, there's just more opportunities, more competitions. It's growing globally, and you know, the people in like the 105 kilo category, 230 pounds, like those guys, they're pretty fit. Like they can move and they can do things that are like really crazy. Like, you know, pick up a 300-pound sandbag and run, put it over a 44-inch steeple, and then pick it back up and run to the end. And Strongman to me is like CrossFit, but where nothing is over a minute and everything is just way heavier. you need the same sorts of energy systems, and you need to be fit to be good at the sport, at least in the weight classes. And even now, there's a big trend in Strongman where even at the pro level, the open level, we're talking guys who are like 350 pounds plus. Even they're starting to learn and realize that brute strength and poor eating habits isn't going to get you to your goal. You know, one of the current best strongmen in the world is Mitchell Hooper, a Canadian, and his background was long distance running. And a lot of his message and branding is about quality of movement, quality of nutrition, being athletic. And he's winning. He's winning championships because his technical prowess allows him to make up for the fact that he's not the biggest necessarily, or necessarily the strongest statically in certain events, but he just places consistently well on all the events. And on high power output events like yoke carries, well, he mops the floor, and he's just very, very good. So it's interesting to see in strongman principles that I'm very familiar with. And to answer your original question about competing, yes. So basically, last summer, being in contemplation, at one point, I saw a competition that was going to take place about an hour and a half away. And I was like, I just messaged the organizer and I was like, I want to participate. He's like, okay. He's like, I'm like, can I sign up? I know we're pretty close to the deadline, but could I do it? And he's like, yeah, sure. So I sent in my application fee and signed up to Strongman Corp Canada and went to the competition and as a novice and finished second and had a blast. I really had a lot of fun. There's a lot of parallels to what I felt back in the day in CrossFit. It's like a small family. The event, everyone's like pretty friendly. Everyone's willing to help each other out. We had Atlas stones and I had never used the tacky. And like people after the event were like handing me like degummer to get it off my skin. And everyone was like super, super chill. And I got hooked. The events were like a mix of certain things that I was okay at and less okay at. Like I had 2 weeks to practice with a circus dumbbell, and it was at 120 pounds, and I had this big, metal barrel on my shoulder, and I was like, okay, and got a few reps in, and it was fun. So I competed again 2 weeks after that. I did provincials as a novice last year, which I ended up winning, which was super, super cool. I did it with my wife. She competed as a novice too, and we both won. And so it was just a good time. And then over the off season, we'll call it, because there's an off season in strongman in the winter months, I found myself a coach. And the coach that I found is like being athletic matters to him. And so it works. It fits what I want to do. Mm-hmm. And I still do weightlifting, and I still do the occasional Metcon for my fitness. CrossFit's still my GPP. And then just through that, like building the capacity for, events that I have very little experience in, like log, Atlas stones, like just all that fun stuff.
The Slater log, that's it. I was trying to think, what's that log called? The Slater log.
Yeah, the Slater log. I think that that thing has like a minimum weight of like 300 pounds. So I'm not there yet. Or it's pretty heavy, just the base weight. So
is it weird to try not to do like a full Olympic clean on some of those apparatus? Because they do that like belly clean, get it up to the belly and then roll it off the belly.
Yeah. So depending on the implement, like that is definitely the preferred technique. And with a log, I don't find it particularly jarring. Where it gets a little trickier is, let's say, with an axle. So at the second competition I did, it was an axle clean and press. And so, you got to start with that mixed grip, bring it to your belly. And at the end of the day, like there's no hard rules for how you get it overhead as long as you get it overhead. So what did I do? I did a hang power clean. I got under the bar. I stood up and I did a split jerk. And that's totally okay. And even now today, this morning, I was doing some axle split jerks. Like that's the sport is going, as I said, like technical prowess matters in the sport. It's mattering more and more. And so obviously if you have the strength to push press, you're at an advantage just because you can cycle faster in a push press. But if you're going for a max, well, guess what? If you can split jerk, you have an advantage over someone who can't.
For sure.
And so then the weightlifting background is not lost, which is actually really fun, because it's as I said, it's like doing CrossFit but with different implements and in different modalities. But the goal is still to be fit, well-rounded, and just a little stronger than your average CrossFitter.
Well, and what's interesting is I'm guessing there's a certain curiosity that Strongman brings to you, and the aspect of pursuing a fitness domain that runs in parallel and tandem in some similar direction of CrossFit,
For sure.
but not feeling like you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, no, I can still be a high level CrossFit coach, a purist in the methodology, but the application, that's almost one of the missing aspects of CrossFit, is like, how are you applying it to something outside of? So how is it complemented your GPP training and then your knowledge of the methodology?
Well, that's a really good question. So I'm going to take a step back. This journey began actually a couple of years ago where I started playing sports again. Because after, 12, 13 years of CrossFit, I was like, the methodology says that at the end of the day, you should, play and learn new sports. And a sport was missing from my life. I'm going to call myself an above average CrossFitter. I have no qualms about saying that. I can do all the skills. I'll perform relatively well, consistent, like 90th percentile in the open, which is totally okay by my books. But I also know that my genetic predisposition is not to be like the next level of CrossFit fitness is very hard for me because it might not show on this call, but I mentioned it before, but like I'm 6'1" and close to 250. So guess what? High volume chest to bars are always going to be a problem. It's not because I can't do them. It's just that if you weigh 50 pounds less than me, guess what? You're going to beat me on that workout. And muscle ups is a different story because I'm fairly technically proficient. So I get away with it. But if it's high volume, body weight, low technical skills type stuff, box jumps is another great example. Yes, like it's going to be hard for me. And I pushed. I tried to become the best I could at CrossFit. And I still did a couple of CrossFit competitions last year for fun. I still love it. I still love doing them. If someone asked me, I probably wouldn't say no. But I was also starting to be very curious about, okay, well, this is the body that I've been given. What happens if I try to push it in a sport that I might be more predisposed to be good at? And it's been really fun. It's been really fun to try and get my deadlift numbers up and my squat numbers up and pressing overhead heavy and doing heavy sandbag cleans because I just like that grunt work type of stuff. But none of it feels foreign because I spent so much time building my fitness in CrossFit. And I'll say this again, my strongman training doesn't feel far off from your a CrossFit technical weightlifting session. Sure, there's some differences, and there's the concept of progressive overload and having to do the additional isolation work to build tricep strength or hamstring strength for sure. It's just the needs of the sport. But there's also a lot of sled sprints and other sorts of adjacent GPP work where you're winded and you have to push it. And so it's doing bike sprints or ski erg sprints. So the programming is tailored more to the shorter time domains when I'm doing my strongman training. But when I'm doing CrossFit, I'll try and not cherry pick, but I'll try and do longer workouts to complement that. Because I know that for my overall fitness, being good across the broad time and modal domains will still help me in my strongman. Because that's always played out for me. Even if an AMRAP 20 is not my jam, I have no shame in admitting it. If I tried to be better at those AMRAP 20s, I would still be better at AMRAP 12s or AMRAP 8s or high power output stuff because I was just fitter. So the principles aren't far off from the stuff that I learned 15 years ago. Those principles haven't changed.
That's very cool. And, been at this coaching now for, doing it and then coaching for 12, 15 years. What still excites you about coaching? Because you're still, you're seminar staff, but you're still just coaching in an affiliate. Do you have a regular time slot, a regular crowd, or?
Yep. Yeah. Friday nights is when I coach. And yes, the the one thing that has always motivated me in my coaching is believing in someone more than they believe in themselves, and then getting them to realize that they can do it, and then they're very thankful. So I guess to add a little color to that, it's, like you build a relationship with these people, which is super valuable and rewarding in and of itself. And then you get to a point in the coaching journey where they don't believe that they can add 10 more pounds to a bar on a squat, for example. And then you tell them that you believe in them, and they do it, and then they rack the bar and they're beaming. And that reaction is so visceral, but it's so validating as a coach. And I still love it to this day. I like watching people PR. I like watching people acquire new skills. I still like making a difference and providing a high level of coaching to get people the results that they want and achieve the goals that they're trying to achieve.
You probably then have to have time within a 60-minute class to facilitate that relationship building, don't you?
For sure. Are you insinuating something, Matt?
Well, I mean, we were talking with Jocelyn and she's saying, less is more. We're in this almost like volume phase. Although what's interesting, it's at the affiliate level, I think there's a lot of volume training happening, especially with the High Rocks integration. And I think it's been quite a seamless integration for a lot of affiliates, which is really great. But it's interesting watching a lot of competitors talk, especially like Rich Froning saying they're all going back to less volume now, like minimum effective dose. So this kind of wheel is spinning, but that is a missing. I think there's for gyms that run like a strength plus metcon, we'll say every single day they worry about potentially filling the time, or their coach is filling the time. And what you're replacing in activity, you're putting in relationship building and practice and opportunities to prove to someone that they're capable in a time where you're not managing the clock. It's a long, you know what I mean?
I don't disagree. I don't disagree at all. Volume is a trap if it's at the expense of relationship building and actual coaching. And so one pet peeve of mine, and one thing that makes me sad sometimes, is when I go to a gym, or even in the context of a level 2, and people are like, they're like, wow, like you coached a lot in that class. It's like, yeah, that's what I'm here to do. Or even sometimes at the gym, like I'll hear, because I'm not head coach. I'm just like, I'm a part-time coach and I enjoy my role. And I don't, even though I'm on staff, like I don't use my status to influence or belittle or do anything to the gym. Like I like the gym for what it is. I think the owners are doing a great job. And like I've offered my services on numerous occasions to do coaching development, and they've taken me up on it. But I'm not in the trenches every day doing coaching development. So if like a newer coach coaches less, I mean, that's expected because they're a newer coach, right? But then sometimes like they'll come to my class and they're like, wow, like you give me like a lot of cues. It's like, yeah, that's the standard. Like I'm not very shy about saying that, like that's what the standard should be. In an hour-long class, like I don't stop per se.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's where everyone's going to start. That's not where I started. Like I was as stiff as a board back in the day. Like I was, you have to understand that I was shy. And so I became a learned extrovert through coaching. Like that allowed me to find something within myself and enjoy the transmission of knowledge. Like I knew I wanted to be a teacher growing up, but I didn't want to be in the school system, if that makes sense. But coaching allowed me to fulfill a vocation just in sport. But I was still very shy. So like breaking out of that shell and So, and actually not being shy about coaching, like realizing that the people who are there in your class and that are paying to be there are paying for a service, and that service includes making them better. And so I'm never shy about demanding a little bit more out of someone's elbows in a front rack position. That being said, if there's so much volume in the class that all you're doing is like herding cats or going from one thing to another, or you have complex movements that you just don't have time to delve into, it's hard to get better at them. Like, this isn't really a problem at my affiliate, God bless, but you know, it's not uncommon to hear about what you're saying, Matt, where part A has a power clean, and part A power cleans have certain percentages attached to them with no reasonable time frame to which to get to those percentages or to even teach the thing. And I've been in that situation before, coaching part-time in other gyms where I was, you know, just basically acting out the programming. Like, I had no real, this is especially during COVID, where I was just trying to find work, from being honest. And I would look at the board and I'd be like, I'm screwed. And everyone else and everyone in here is screwed. Like, power cleans, 80%, 83%, 88%. And then, you know, 15 minutes to do it. And you're like, okay, what can I reasonably teach in about a minute? Set up, stance, jump, catch. Like, I'm not doing a fantastic job of teaching. And then you have like 4 minutes to ramp up. So anyone who has a power clean over 200 pounds is completely screwed. And then you just do the thing and you do the best that you can. Like, I would always try and do the best that I can. But if that's what's going to be day in, day out, it's going to be very, very hard to raise the technical level of your gym and actually promote fitness. You're going to hit a lot of plateaus. People might get hurt. So strength plus Metcon is a useful tool. I've programmed it. I programmed for CrossFit Laval for years with Matt. We would, you know, have 3-hour meetings a week and just like sit down and hash it all out. And yeah, for sure there was like strength plus Metcon, but there was also a lot of technical plus Metcon or technical plus strength, with the goal to provide space and time to go over technique, to teach, to refine the mechanics, and then work out hard or go heavy on like a strength day. And I'm not going to sit here and say that there's like a perfect balance between those things. It really depends on your community and stuff like that, but there has to be a mix of those things: strength plus Metcon, technical plus strength, technical plus Metcon. And then, you know, if you have like a longer AMRAP day with some complex movements, well, you don't have a part A then. You have teaching for the workout, and then you do the workout. If it's like an AMRAP 30 with power cleans, you don't have time to add a whole bunch of stuff. And trying to add stuff is where I think people fail their members in that sense.
Well, exactly. And I mean, that strength plus Metcon really, I think, just existed from a practice plus Metcon in a way. You know, we had power cleans yesterday for singles. We follow CAT programming, and, you know, 10 power cleans at 185 expected to be done as singles. Well, we can spend 8 minutes doing a 3-position clean to practice and refine the mechanics while building up to the workout weight.
Yep.
If you wanted to put that into like, we're doing some strength building and a workout, sure. But I feel like folks think, well, what if I take that piece away? It still looks and smells the same, but you're accomplishing something a little bit more productive to make the workout be the main event that day.
Yep, 100% agree. But I mean, like, I know that you're really big on the methodology as well, and it's hard for me to sit here and disagree with that. Yeah, it really becomes a question of intention.
Right.
You know, you can go heavy, but it can be technically based. And so if it's, say, an EMOM of cleans, well, the intensity is relatively low, and you can say build up for the first 4 minutes, and let's say it's an EMOM of 10, you know, build up for the first 4 and then hit 5 heavy cleans from minutes 5 till 10. that's totally okay. Like it's not at high intensity. And the goal there is you as a coach are going around and making sure that everyone in your class has a cue or two on their clean. And then once that's done, like people are still like fresh-ish. Like they can still function and hit a Metcon hard after that because they're not beat up by the strength portion.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if the goal is, I've seen programs like I think the biggest culprit is stuff like build up to a heavy 1RM in 15 minutes. It's like, well, if someone really goes for it, like they're done for the class, and then they're going to sandbag the workout. Like I can't imagine doing any sort of Metcon after truly going for a 1RM in my front squat. I'd be neurologically wrecked.
Right.
But if the goal is to like stay within a certain percentage or to have a focus of, you know, pushing my knees out more or sitting further back or keeping my elbows up higher, and it forces me to go at a slightly lower weight to work on my technique, well, then I'm still good for a Metcon after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand it because you want to fill the class, and I don't want to sit here and sound like you should have a whole bunch of dead space in your class. That's not what I'm going to argue for, but there should be the part A, unless part A is really like go for a max, and then the Metcon after that is more like a finisher. Again, it's the intention that changes. It's the goal here is to go heavy, and the Metcon afterwards is more like a get sweaty style finisher, and there's no score attached to it. Well, that's cool. Like that could be another avenue of programming where your goal is to develop strength, and then some people just want to sweat, and I get it. I've had this argument with people over the last decade. Fine, you want to sweat? Well, good. And then we're going to put like a 5-minute AMRAP of 10 cal bike and 20 sit-ups, and you know, have at it. You'll get a little sweaty, and if you push the bike, it's going to hurt, and you know, you can go home happy. But as a coach, my goal is to make sure that that heavy deadlift beforehand, or heavy squat, or heavy power clean, or whatever the max is, or heavy day is, that you push that and PR'd on that if possible. Then you get to sweat.
For sure. And I mean, I think the zoomed out 30,000 principle that we're kind of stepping around is probably what you have to reinforce, or what you get to reinforce at the level 2 every time you do it, right? We're not saying this is the way you have to do it.
Nope.
But
never.
Right. But if we want to use some sort of objective measurable of, did I effectively coach this class today, giving people cues and helping them practice and making them a little better? Well, then there's some best practices that just give you more opportunity to do that.
100%. 100%. I think CrossFit's done a really good job of developing resources for coaches. Like they have like those programming worksheets and coaching worksheets where you can do analysis like that. Like, did you have time to actually teach that movement? If the answer is no, then you have to self-reflect a little bit. Is it because as a coach you didn't know how to teach it? Is it because you didn't have time because the programming was too lengthy or too charged, or charged? That's like a very French term that I translated right there and then, but I meant like just
I was just saying here,
yeah, exactly. It's just too much volume. That sometimes the French in me just comes out randomly. But yeah, it's definitely a conversation that comes up amongst affiliate owners, and even people who coach at affiliates whose owners are, you know, they're bought into a certain type of programming and don't want to change, even though that programming not be like the most beneficial for their gym. If you have like a gym full of newbies or like a relatively young community, which is fantastic, like those places are great. But if you decided that proven affiliate track was the way that you're going to get your members fitter, like you're going to run into issues because those more beginner athletes are going to be thrust into a programming that is so tight, has way too much volume for your average beginner. And so that's just not the best programming. Not that it's bad programming, it's just not the best programming for your community where they're at right now. Mm-hmm. And so you have to, I think, like as an affiliate owner, you have to be flexible. And then as an affiliate owner or a coach, you have to ask yourself the question, like, was I able to see everyone in the class? Did I have time to actually coach something? If it's a bunch of simple movements and you could review the burpee in 2 minutes, well, then you revert to the burpee in 2 minutes. But
Right.
if we're talking about a muscle up, and your instruction of the muscle up was, for those who can't do them, we're going to do low ring transitions. It looks like this. And then you start the workout. Those people you're going to be working, you're going to be pulling out fires for the whole workout. Like you're going to have a bunch of people doing random stuff. Whereas if you have the time to actually go over the mechanics of a low ring transition, then not only do your veteran members get the benefit of actually warming up for a muscle up, but then your newer members actually get specific instruction on how they should perform it in the workout. As an example.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, you're making the passion's coming out now. I can feel it in my bones.
There we go. Hell yeah. Let's go. I think it would be remiss not to, it may be something you almost will say take for granted, but I think the tens of people listening to this, you are a high level coach on seminar staff and you coach part-time.
Mm-hmm.
What's someone might be, we'll say, intimidated, whether it's by your piercing eyes or your status on staff. But I know managing coach personalities is tough, but what if just some stuff you've seen and that, I don't want to say make it easy, but like, I guess I think you know what I mean, right? How can someone say like, well, how can I manage Ben? He's teaching me at my level 2 this weekend and I'm supposed to be his head coach. Like, what are just some tips overall that you've found?
For like me at New Zen?
Yeah, like your scenario and maybe someone like an affiliate owner who's either, I think a common scenario might be an affiliate owner who's transitioning into a new ownership role. Mm-hmm. They're inheriting a staff that may be higher than them in experience or qualifications or both, and might struggle with feeling like they need to lead them or be above them, but maybe that's the flaw in and of itself.
I'm going to speak about myself in this affiliate. So for the first 3 months training there, I didn't tell them at all who I was. I didn't tell them that I was a former full-time coach. I didn't tell them that I was on staff. I didn't do any of that. It's only when there was a level 1 coming up and I was encouraging people to go to it, and then like the questions began. It's like, well, I'm on staff. And then they're like, would you like to coach here? Yeah, okay, sure. I would love to coach. Actually, I really wanted to start coaching there. So it worked out. But I also have, this is just me and my nature, like a lot of humility about who I am and what I do. And I don't take up space at the gym. But that's my own choice. I'm a part-time coach. I'm a part of the community. I want to add to the community to the best of my capacities. I'll offer my services to do coaching development when necessary. I actually had someone who now coaches not 6 or 7 classes a week that was under my wing for months. It was super fun to have like a mentoree, and I was their mentor. So like that worked out well. Like when there are new coaches and they can pair up with me, like I will guide them. I'll provide, occasional feedback on programming. But I also know my place. I'm a part-time coach. Yeah, sure, I'm on staff. Yeah, sure, I've been doing it for 15 years. Yes, I have more experience, but what good does it give me to try and prove that I'm better? That would be more for my own ego. The goal of me coaching on Friday nights is because I love it, and 2, because I want to make a difference for the people that I'm coaching. But I'm not there to pretend that I'm better. Okay, maybe functionally speaking, I am because of the experience that I have, but that's not the point. And so I would place a high premium as an affiliate owner on coaches who understand what the goal is, and for the culture of the gym to be the betterment of the members. And as an affiliate owner, you can definitely be open to feedback from your more experienced coaches. For sure. They probably have valid opinions. No one is ever 100% right or 100% wrong. So for a coach, be open, be humble. Remember that the mission is more important than your own ego. And for the affiliate owner, develop a culture where it's okay to hold each other to a high standard. Welcome that.
Mm-hmm.
And then if people really start getting problematic, like pumping their own tires in front of members, or like, yeah, like the owner this, the owner that, like I've been at this for longer, like you'll have to have conversations with them, because I didn't become a good coach to serve myself. That would
Right.
that would I wouldn't be doing it for this long and enjoying it if it was really just for my own ego. And so even being a part-time coach at this affiliate now, that's really not the goal. It's how can I serve this community in the capacity that I'm in now? If I was coaching full-time and writing programming, well, then I'd be occupying a very different role. But that's not my role right now. I have a full-time job. I work for CrossFit. I work full-time. I have the seminars. I'm keeping up in an affiliate because I want to make a difference and because I like what I do. I love what I do. That's a very long-winded answer.
But I mean, yeah, it's doing all the right things for all the right people for all the right reasons.
I love that quote. That's such a good quote.
And it's almost like, to that point, judge someone who, based on their ability to project care to the crowd. I've had a coach who's no longer on my team who just cared so much about the people in front of them, and that's what kept that person on the team. And I didn't have to prove it to anyone. So people would ask or be, and there came a point where this person's technical proficiency just wasn't up to the standard.
Yeah.
And they had to move on, and that's a different story. But you can have that be completely different or completely upside down, and that's why presence and attitude exists as an aspect of effective training.
For sure. Yeah, I 100% agree with you there, Matt. You have to have the mix of technical capacity and care. That's on you as a coach. For sure, the affiliate owner can facilitate that development, and hopefully the affiliate owner pushes you in that direction. And then on the flip side, the owner of the gym is 100% responsible for the culture of the gym. And so ironically, the gym that I'm at now before was considered a competitive, I'm putting that in air quotes, competitive gym. We all know kind of what that means, right? Like high volume, lots of heavy stuff, just like jam-packed classes. And they were a competitive gym, quote unquote. And one of the reasons why I didn't go there when CrossFit About closed at first is because I didn't want that. That's not the experience that I wanted. Nor was I ever going to coach at a gym where that was the experience. But when I found out that the owners had changed and that the new owners were a lot more invested in building a community, their like overarching mantra is having the gym be the epicenter for each generation. So they have, a CrossFit Kids programming, and they have the normal adult classes, and they also have the senior classes. And sometimes it's like 3 generations of the same family that are doing the programs. It's like, the kids, the parents, the grandparents, and like that's super cool. Like that makes me want to be on board. And so then as a coach, it's like, how can I supplement the culture of the gym and what they're trying to build? So that's on me as a coach. And then as the affiliate owner, yeah, you're 100% responsible for the culture. So if you want a gym where people move well, then you need to hold your coaches to a certain technical standard. If you want people to keep coming back and to increase client retention, well, then you also need coaches who are not only technically proficient, but coaches that care and build relationships. And then as an owner, you have to have programming that allows for all of that. Right. It's like, okay, am I giving the time and space and tools to my coaches to build relationships, teach, see, correct, get people fitter, and have everyone leave with a smile at the end of the day.
For sure. How can
That's
people?
a very idealized thought process.
So if someone says, Ben, I need more teachings from you, how can they get a hold of you to maybe reach out and ask questions, or if they want to dabble in strongman?
You can find me at Coach Ben P on Instagram. I have a very small social media presence. I have way more followers than I deserve, considering how infrequently I post. But I have started to, try and post a little bit more with my strongman journey. But I am very available through DMs for coaching related questions. I love helping people out. And so if you do have a coaching related question, like, you can find me there, and I'm not shy about answering back.
That's great. And 3, 2, 1, time.